Hello, this is Frank Shines and Umar Qureshi. Thanks
Hi.
for joining us. We're going to talk about the history of Lean Six Sigma. Um, I'm Frank Shines, a former IBM executive Air Force officer. My nickname is Real, so you'll see the little Frank Real in the upper left to signify what we're talking about. Um, we're going to provide you just a quick overview of what is Lean Six Sigma, kind of the history of it, kind of where it came from to understand what it is. Okay? So we can flashback right to the turn of the century when the assembly line in the 19th century was created by Ford to create the Model A, later the Model T. Uh, then we moved forward in time, and the Japanese looked at some of these ideas and they combined it with some of the restrictions they had in their limitations for storing inventory and the fact that they were very small islands, so they didn't have a lot of space. So they had to create something much smaller than the large warehouse of the assembly line approach. So they created this concept called lean. And so as we fast forward, we see the lean concept in the lower left, and then the lean concept getting roboticized a little bit more in the upper middle chart. And then later, many of the organizations that were not manufacturing offices began to use these concepts of Lean Six Sigma. And you can see an example of that in the lower right. And then the future is really where Amazon is now taking things as we move from Toyota's Lean and Motorola's Six Sigma to a combination of Lean Six Sigma combined with digitization, digital transformation, robotics, artificial intelligence, big data, machine learning. All of those things are now being perfected by Amazon. You can see the Amazon robot there, those Kia robots that are used with uh, support of people to handle their warehousing operations. Umar, let's go to the next slide. In the next slide, what we're going to do is see a timeline of the history in a little more detail. So on the far left, what you're seeing is going all the way back to the 1800s when, remember that thing, the normal curve they talk about in school, the people who have mostly get B's and C's, they're in the middle of that normal curve, they're average. And the people who are below average are on the far left-hand side of that curve, they get the D's and the F's. And individuals that are at the top, the people who always get A's and a teacher's pet that brings in the apple to school, right? Those people at the very top end, a very small percent of those people get the A's and A pluses. So that kind of represents your normal curve. Well, the guy who created that was a guy named C.F. Gauss back in the 1800s. This is real important because this normal curve is later going to be used by Lean, by Six Sigma as a way of managing and predicting behavior of an organization. And once you can predict the behavior, then you can improve it. And that's what's made Lean Six Sigma such a powerful tool. So we talked before about Ford, the Model A, the Model T, the assembly line process. Ford came up with mass production. Uh, Frederick Taylor came in and did the first time and motion studies to kind of understand how do we take labor and specialize it in certain areas. So one person will do one part of the car, they'll do their part, and then they'll pass it on to the next person in the assembly line to do their part, and so forth and so on until the car is fully manufactured, assembled, painted, and shined up and sent out to the customers. Uh, then the war came, World War II. The only reason, part of the reason we won World War II is because Rosie the Riveter, right? The men went off to war, the women were behind, and they were put in charge of the factories. Rosie the Riveter, we can do it, what you're seeing there. Uh, the power of what they were able to do became war secrets, known as Z1 war secrets, which is some tools and things that we talk about in more detail in some future parts of Lean Six Sigma. But these tools allowed us to essentially create mass produce weaponry and armaments and so forth in order to win the war. World War II was what's known as a war of attrition. As a former Air Force officer at the Air Force Academy, we had to study all about the history of war. World War I was what's known as trench warfare, but World War II was a war of attrition. The people who could, the companies, the organizations, the countries that could work together and create more bombs and weaponry as the war depleted those were the ones that were going to win that war. And it turned out that ended up being the US and its allies. but the women played an important role in making that happen. Those tools that were then developed and perfected for production in the plants throughout the United States were later taken to Japan with General MacArthur. He went over there with Duran and Dr. Deming and others, trained the Japanese in these methods. Similar type of thing took place as part of the Marshall Plan over in Europe. A lot of these ideas, ultimately, we can see that in the precision German engineering that's part of world-class manufacturing that Siemens and other companies have taken to the next level. So that idea, Taiichi Ohno took to Toyota from World War II and Dr. Deming and General MacArthur. They perfected this method by looking at the assembly lines, combining it with the supermarket, the way American supermarkets worked. They found a way to make it much more efficient without having to use a lot of space and a lot of inventory and warehousing. And consequently, they invented this concept called lean, keeping things very lean, just in time, only making what the customer wants when they want it. That approach has evolved forward and was picked up with Motorola in the mid-'80s when Bill Smith and Michael Harry developed a mechanism to improve the quality using Six Sigma. Lean and Six Sigma were then combined, and we refer to it now as Lean Six Sigma. And what has recently happened is Amazon has taken the ideas of Lean Six Sigma, they call it operational excellence. They use that to improve and streamline their processes and make things easier. And then once they do that, they then automate it using technology, robotics, and those sorts of things so that it's much more efficient and automated. Dr. Hafifi Lee from Google and Stanford University is now playing the next role. She's bringing in AI-driven customization concepts. She came up with this whole idea of what's known as ImageNet, which really revolutionized. It was really the key milestone in terms of practical application of artificial intelligence that's now making it possible to do things like real-time translations through your mobile phone, the Alexa, Google Talk, and all these other sorts of devices that are now springing up all around the world. And that is really going to be the future of Lean Six Sigma. It's going to really be an AI-driven mass customization using Lean Six Sigma problem solving and data analytics. Well, there we are. A quick overview of the history of Lean Six Sigma in a few minutes. This has been Umer Qureshi and Frank Shines. Umer, by the way, is an individual that I've been mentoring over the last 4 or 5 years. He's exceptional when it comes to online marketing and taking the concepts of Lean Six Sigma and applying them to online marketing, to digitization of digital processes, as well as working in the manufacturing industry where he has a degree in mechanical engineering. So thank you all for your time. Umer, thanks for taking the lead on moving the slides forward as we had this quick discussion on the history of Lean Six Sigma.
Thank you very much.
Okay, you guys all have a great day. Bye.
Bye.